Hello, everybody. My name's Andrew. Can anybody hear me? All right, looks like it is. Well, welcome everybody. This is my webinar today on shortcuts on becoming a Paladin power user. My name's Andrew Martinelli. I've been here for about a full year at this point, which has been great. I'm actually working under Charles, which normally does these webinars, but I think we can all agree that, or thank God he's not here, am I right? No, I'm just kidding. Alrighty, well, yeah, I just wanted to proceed forward. Just a little bit on my personal background. I come from a heavy Windows repair background, which relied on efficiency and getting to where you need to go as fast as possible. So shortcuts was like the biggest thing for me, right? I needed to be efficient, fast, and get to where I needed to get to as quick as possible. So that's why I think this is going to be a great webinar for everyone here, just because hopefully we can teach at least some of you guys something that will help you at least be a little bit more efficient. So real quick, I did just want to mention that if you guys did have any questions, feel free to throw it in the chat. That being said, I want to just get through these webinar slide decks because who knows, maybe the question will be answered near the end. They kind of go in order, but there are some things that are touched on near the end. So I will answer all the questions at the end if there are any. So feel free to just toss it in there, but yeah, it's not a big deal. So, all right, let's go ahead and proceed forward. So first things first, so here are kind of the three right-click menus. So right-click menus are really important for just essentially getting more options to whatever you're clicking on, right? So on the left there, we have the invoice and quote menu. In the center, we have the PO menu, so if you're in the POs, and then you have the PO receive menu, so if you're receiving. That's just kind of what they look like. We'll touch on each individual one just to kind of what they look like. So for example, we'll go ahead and get started on the right-click magic here for the invoice and quote side. This is great for getting to commonly used tasks or tools, and it's great for increasing efficiency during your checkout process. One thing you will notice on here is there are some options that are grayed out, and that is related to either the don't apply to that line item. The employee that's currently signed in does not have permissions to do whichever that's grayed out, or that feature is just not enabled. Another thing you'll notice on here as well is that at the end of the name, you'll see in parentheses a keyboard shortcut. So if you're a keyboard only Paladin user, which you can do, this is just, it'll show you the ways that you can access these with just hitting Control T or Control A or Alt A or whichever, right? Which is kind of cool. So next thing here is we'll go ahead and get started with begin with the invoice and quote here and kind of just going through basic line editing, access to profit analysts, invoice subtotals, invoice search, tax holiday tool, and more. All right, biggest thing first here is the insert line item. So this is a great tool if you're just wanting to sort your purchase order or your invoice in a better way. If the customer asks for a specific thing or if you need it in a specific order, you can go ahead and right click on the line item, click insert line item, and it'll always appear above the one that you right clicked on. So make sure you're putting it on the one that is below where you want the one to be. And the next is insert note, which will also come above the line. And then in this case, what you'll do is, if you need to add a note to say, hey, a manager override or customer satisfaction, so we gave them a bit of a discount, or, whichever you want to add in there, that's a good way to put it. Next is add precision. So this is more for precise quantity and price values. So the biggest thing here is that the quantity is up to 4 decimal places and the price is up to 6 decimal places. Seems kind of crazy, but for our example here of crushed rock, sometimes you need to be that exact to get the price right. The other thing you'll see is that the extension will be calculated, and you'll actually see it on the next field here of the exact math, the calculation, and all that fun stuff. So one thing to note here is your price will have a little tilde next to it. Pretty much what that means is it's going to be a slightly different than the price you entered. The variation is expected, but it's the additional precision is again in the quantity field next below it. So that's where you'll see that. Next thing here is we have Profit Analyst. Profit Analyst kind of shows you the profit and margin for that item just to show you what kind of wiggle room you have for that item. Keyboard shortcuts Control A. Again, this is an employee explicitly granted, so you have to give your employees this tool. If you only want your managers to be able to access this, if you want to be the only person that accesses that, that's totally fine. Where you do that is invoice or file setup, employees, and then it's profit analyst, little checkbox that you just mark there to get this. But this is a great tool just to see like, hey, what am I making on this item? If somebody's like, can you give me a discount? That will show you what it's looking like. Next is footage calculator. I'm sure a lot of our lumber stores kind of use a lot of this stuff, but it's mostly just to tally up different lengths of items. It could be great for selling items by the foot, which is very nice for wire, stuff like that. Keyboard shortcut for this one is Control K as well. Next is going to be quantity price extension, or excuse me, this is just kind of what it's going to look like once you apply that the footage calculator to it here. So once you apply that footage calculator, this is kind of what it'll look like. You have your breakdown here at the bottom, the 10 at 8 and 8 by 4, pretty much whatever you enter in there. Next year's we have the square footage calculator. So this one's if you know you're doing just specifically square foot and you just needed to sell by that. It's the same kind of deal, right? You're just entering what the square feet is, and it'll calculate the price based off that. Keyboard shortcut for that one was Control S. Next up here is the quantity and, or again, this is I guess what you see in here as well. Just the same thing, it's just showing you kind of what the breakout looks like, what you're expecting to see at the price and based off square footing. All right, insert subtotal. So this one is a good, I actually personally really like this one, and this is kind of just showing you that if you're ringing something out to someone that's doing like an entire remodel, right, let's just say, and they want to break out one giant invoice into separate sections, like this one's your paint supplies, this one's your living room, whichever, right? It doesn't really matter, whichever you can name it, but it'll essentially add up all of them up until that point and give you the subtotal for that on just the one invoice. And you can kind of go through and just break out your invoice into separate sections just so they know what they're spending the money on. And customers really like that, so it's really cool. All right, next we have update to current price. That is a good option, right? If you go ahead and you store a quote for a customer, they come back however many days later, turns out that item's either on sale or was not on sale, and if you're going to honor that price, it'll show you, what the difference is. And if you want to bring that up to the sale price, or if you want to bring that back to original price, you just right click and then hit update to current price. That'll do that for that line item. But right below it, you'll see update to all current prices, and that shows it does it for the whole invoice. The whole invoice will get updated to the current prices across the board. So just make sure you're looking at each one. You don't want to accidentally promise someone a price, then update everything to current price, and then have them be mad at you. All right, search, invoice, and quote. This is a great option. I think a lot of people know this shortcut. I think it's used quite often, which is Control F, pretty much anywhere on computer, Windows, searching browsers. It's the search function, right? You hit Control F, you type in what you want to find in on that page, and there it is. Paladin has the same exact thing, and I think it's great because if you have a gigantic purchase order, stored quote, if you have a giant invoice just written up, and then you go, hey, did you get that item? You can go, oh gosh, I don't know. Instead of scrolling through the whole invoice, you can just Control F and type in the part number. You can type in the name. You can type in whatever identifier you need, and it'll pop up right there. You go, yep, got it. Or if it doesn't pop up, you go, oh, I missed it. And you can scan it. All right, next is serialization options. So this is pretty much for, this is great for showing the next serial number, right? That needs a serial number. If your store is serialized, or if you have parts that are serialized, whenever you're receiving a truck, or if you're ringing something out, you can get a lot of stuff. You could just right click on, then you can say find next serial number warning, and that'll just find the next line where it requires a serial number to be entered, either if you're selling it or if you're receiving it or whichever, which is great. And then also right above the find serial number warning, you have add serial number. So you can also add it there as well. Weigh item. So obviously you got to have a scale set up, a supported scale all set up, and with Paladin, everything's all connected. Then in that case, you can go ahead and right click on it and then hit weigh item, and then there you go. It'll give you just the calculations right then and there, and you got the little zero out button just in case if you need to, but yeah, there it is there. Next is tax holiday. I know we've kind of beaten in the head with the tax holiday stuff. We've talked about it in a lot of different things. It's just something that was kind of randomly thrown at everyone in the retail space to just have to give sales tax on only some of an item, not all of an item. It's kind of hard to deal with, but we have a great and a simple way to deal with it. So if you just right click on the item, we like to use the bicycle example because it's kind of funny, I personally think. So if you have a bicycle that's $400 and you need to give $250 of that bicycle not tax-free, right click tax holiday, enter in the amount that needs to be sold without tax, and this is kind of what you'll see. You'll see essentially two lines, the first and second tax holiday, and these two work together to essentially adjust the sales tax without adjusting the sale price, right? And what we'll see there is $250 of that not being able to be taxed. It's great. All right, copy and paste. So this one is a great option for if you need to copy and paste notes throughout your invoice. That being said, you can't copy the whole line item and paste it. I think that's kind of silly. Just scan the same item or type in the part number. But just be aware you can't like copy a whole line item and then paste it. It won't work. You just can mostly only kind of copy and paste notes in some text fields. So we have it in there. It's just somebody that really wanted to copy and paste notes throughout their invoice. Makes sense, right? Just to have it. So that's what that looks like there. All right, so now we're in the Create PO menu, and in this one, it kind of includes basic line editing, higher precisions and cost and quantities, kind of very similar we saw in Invoice and Quote, and again, in Invoice and Quote, copy and paste. So very similar to what we have in Invoice and Quote, essentially you've got the same three at the top here. You got insert line item, insert note, and then delete line item. So those are the same three with the same shortcuts and everything. They do pretty much the exact same thing. If you need to insert the line item, you can just put it in. If you need to insert a note, there it is as well. And if you need to delete it, you can do that, or you can hit F3. All right, next we have add precision. Now this is almost the exact same. You got 4 decimal places for quantity, 6 decimal places for price, but this is for your cost. This is not for the sale, this is for your cost. So make sure that you're entering it all in correctly and make sure you adjust it, and it'll change the extension value real time. So you don't need to close out the service order, or you don't need to close out the purchase order, bring it back up if you messed up, if you typed it in. If you typed it in and you're like, oh crap, I typed in the wrong number, you can just right click, add precision again, and then write that in there. All right, yep, so this is kind of what you'll see here for what it looks like after it's all been broken out and it's all been adjusted. Again, the tilde will appear because it's kind of just an about cost, it's an approximation. Again, it'll look a little bit different, but again, the variation is expected. All right, now we'll be in the receive purchase order menu. So in the receive purchase order menu, we have the update purchase order quantity and costs, add serial numbers for serialized items, and copy and paste. All right, so for this, if you need to update your purchase order quantity and costs, you don't have to necessarily move that item and re-add it. You can just right click, update purchase order quantity and costs, and then there's your quantity and there's your cost. So if you need to just update it really quick without having to redo anything or do anything crazy, hit save, there you go, super simple. All right, next we have update purchase, or I guess this is kind of what you'll see here for a little bit after you had adjusted it, you know, your updated order, updated quantity, and then your received cost. So just kind of what you look like, what you see after you adjust it. All right, serialized options. Pretty much the exact same thing as it was before as well, but this is when you're receiving. So obviously, if you receive 1,000 items and you have a gigantic list, you don't want to sit there and be scrolling all the way down until you find the auto serial number warning. You can just right click, find next serial number warning, it'll pop down, right click, add serial number, there you go. Then just keep doing that until it says there's no more serial numbers. It's awesome, makes it a lot quicker to kind of skim through that whole purchase order. All right, next we're going to be talking about Paladin quick keys. So this is related to if you've got Alt keys, I mean, there are some people out there that use Paladin that only use their keyboard. They don't use mouse, they don't have touchscreen, they use everything by keyboard. So this is kind of how you see it. This is kind of what it looks like. So if you hold down the Alt key in Paladin, actually you'll see a lot of the letters for a lot of these names of like file setup, edit, maintain, task. You see a lot of these things light up underlined on the first letter when you press Alt, and that shows you which key you need to push to access that menu. So let's just use file for example. If you hit Alt, all of them will light up, and then if you hit F, it'll then pop up the file menu. If you hit E, it'll open the edit menu and so forth, right? Pretty straightforward. But yeah, it's pretty cool. Again, this is everywhere in Paladin. So if you see that we're in invoice and quote, if you hit Alt, it'll show that. If you hit R, it'll do rewards, C for customer. If you're in inventory, C for class, D for department, and so forth. It's pretty intuitive for that. All right, next is the function keys. So I think a lot of people know this one for F8 checkout. I think we all have used that a million times, and it's pretty nice, but you'll see throughout Paladin everywhere that there's an option, or there's an F button, or an F key is usually what they call it, and that's relating to that option. So if you see F12 recall, F8 checkout, you can use those keyboard shortcuts to maybe make it a little bit quicker, just so you can speed through your invoicing. This one I actually found quite interesting. I actually didn't know this one existed for the longest time, but if you actually hit page down and page up in the specific areas here for customers, credit, balances, whichever, it'll actually cycle through these tabs. I had no clue that it existed, so I'm really glad I figured it out, because that was kind of fun to just flip through the credit, balances, electronics, and all that kind of stuff by just hitting the page down and page up key. So just if that's something that you're interested in, well, there you go. Next, we got Windows quick keys. Again, like I said before, I come from a Windows repair background. I could sit here and talk about this all day for Windows quick keys. I could do this. There's a million that you could use, but we kind of shorten it down to just a couple for now, which is related to Alt Tab. So you hit Alt Tab, it'll show you all of the windows that you have open, and it'll kind of just see exactly what you have there. And if you just keep pressing Tab, it'll cycle through all the ones that you have open, and then if you let go of Alt, it'll open the one that you have open there, which is really nice. I think a lot of people know about this one, but for a lot of people that don't, it's pretty nice. It's a nifty tool. I think you should use it. And then yeah, next is if you hit the Windows key and then if the up arrow, it'll full screen. If you hit down key, it'll minimize. Kind of interesting as well. So if you need to bounce back and forth really fast from something and you only got one screen, yeah, that's a quick way of just minimizing it without having to worry about finding the mouse and then clicking the little minus button. There are a million more of these Windows shortcuts, so we added on a little link to more Windows shortcuts if you are interested in learning more with Windows shortcuts. So feel free to stick around until the end. You'll see where that's at. And then on the Paladin webinars, where you normally go check to see where these are recorded, you'll see that you can click on that link, and that's where it'll take you. Also, just Google it. Just say, hey, what's some Windows shortcuts? You'll find a lot of stuff there. It's kind of my biggest tool. I've learned a lot of stuff from that. All right, so here's just a couple more efficiency tips. We figured we'd just tack these on just because we're all about efficiency for this webinar, and not necessarily a shortcut, but you could classify it as that. So we've got, if you open up the invoice and quote module, you find a customer, you go to their advanced lookup, you click on history, you'll see their purchase history. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but you can actually enter in the quantity for those items in their history and hit save, and that'll add it to their invoice. Same thing for returns. So if you go through and do a return, you could do the same thing by just adding a negative quantity in that history and then hit save, and it'll open up and start a return for those items, which is really nice. It's really easy not to have to go figure what they are, get the part numbers, write them down, or remember them, or copy them, and then bring them all the way to invoice and quote, enter it all in. It's a really easy way of doing that. It's kind of cool. And yeah, this is kind of what you'll see here. So yeah, you just add -1, hit add items to invoice, or F8 for add items to invoice, and there you go. I'll add it all in. All right, this is kind of another fun one that we added in here just because this is essentially a supplier vendor's website, access for advanced lookups. So if you need to access the supplier vendor's website within Paladin without having to back out, go into the supplier vendor's website on a separate browser and do all that fun stuff, you can actually enter their website URL right here, which is under the supplier tab in Paladin. save your changes. And if you go to advanced lookup and then click F2 vendor site, or if you click on vendor site, it'll open it up right then and there. And you'll see it right there, so you don't have to close Paladin, minimize Paladin, go to a separate browser and do all of that, which is really cool. All right, next is create presets for reports. So again, I'm a huge efficiency guy. I'm sorry, you guys probably see me help you guys out a couple times. I dig through these reports and I click through every single one because I don't exactly remember where it's at. So if I could set a preset for reports for every store, I totally would. So what you do is you click create preset, or you click on which report you want. We'll just use the transaction report for this case. Click create preset. And at that point, it's going to have you select which F key at the bottom there that you see that you want to save it to. So obviously we have F1 through 9. You'll see a lot of them are set to none or empty. And you can go through and hit F1 through 9 to select that, run that report, run it right there for you automatically, which is really cool. So if you have 5 consistent reports you run every single day, but you're sick of clicking through all the tabs, just hit F3, there you go, you have all your reports. You can also save these to schedule later, but that's kind of a separate topic. It's a little bit more in depth on that. But if you want to learn more, we have plenty of knowledge base articles on how to do that, how to set those up. So yeah, create presets are great. I think that's something that everyone should use. All right, so here are kind of just the links that we have here for our quick access. Again, this is kind of our personal knowledge base articles on almost everything I touched on here today. And then at the very bottom, we have keyboard shortcuts for Windows, which I implore you, if you have a slow day, to just explore those and just see what they do, because they're quite interesting. There's a lot of stuff that you can learn from those. Next webinar we'll have on September 14th will be on best practices on why printing your own bin tags is a good idea. So feel free to register for that at portal.paladinpos.com/webinars. That's also where you'll find this saved one if you missed it, or if you need to review it later. I did kind of go a little bit fast on this, so I do apologize. So if you need to skip back and review something I had touched on, this is a good place to find it. It'll be right then and there here in a few hours. Alrighty, well, that's going to be it for today. Thank you everyone for attending. I do appreciate. Yeah, I do see a question here for page up and down. That's great. Yeah, I'm glad that people use it because that's really cool. I didn't even know that was a thing. So great. Well, I don't see any other questions here. So alrighty, guys. Well, I think that's everything here today. I will go ahead and end this. And yeah, all right, you guys have a good day. See you later.